If you don't think all-in-one music systems are the future of hi-fi, you are one of two things. Either you have not been paying attention or you are in denial. Apart from loudspeakers, we get asked to review all-in-one music systems the most out of any other product category in hi-fi today. And as evident by our recent Name Unity Atom review, you guys watched it and you can't get enough of these things. So guess what? We have another one for you. Today we are diving into and talking about the Cyrus One Cast Smart Amplifier. Let's get into it. So what exactly is an all-in-one music system and why are they so damn popular? Well, it's basically an entire separate system all rolled into one single chassis with ease of use, and frankly, the four-letter word in hi-fi circles, your lifestyle, in mind. And the Cyrus One Cast is just another example of this type of product, one that leans very, very heavily on smartphone usage. In fact, it almost entirely relies on you being at one with your smartphone. But we're going to get into that in just a moment because there is one thing that I do kind of want to point out about the Cyrus One Cast before we get into its actual performance and day-to-day livability, and that is where on the fence do you sit with relation to a product's sole purpose? Are you all about performance mattering above all else, or is the way in which you interact with and use a product part of its overall performance? And I want you to think about that as we go through this video, because in the end, that is the question that I feel a lot of people are going to have to answer for themselves. But before we get into all of the performance and day-to-day livability of the Cyrus One Cast, you know that we don't do a lot of deep dives into specs on this channel because you know what? You don't listen to specs, you listen to music, you live with the product, and as evident in these lifestyle all-in-one music systems, they're not always about the specs. But I do understand that specs are important to many of you. So here are the specs for the Cyrus One Cast. So now that we have the specs out of the way, and before I jump into the performance of the One Cast, I do want to point out some of the products that we used in order to evaluate this particular amplifier, because I think that it's important, and everything that I talk about will be linked down in the description below. We tested the One Cast on 3 different types of loudspeakers that we have in-house. And the first was the Q Acoustics Concept 500 Towers. The other is the ELAC Debut Reference Bookshelf. And lastly, obviously, our Heresy Mark IVs. In terms of associated equipment, we did stream using a variety of methods, but for analog sources, because you can connect other devices to the One Cast because it does have a built-in phono stage as well as an analog input, I chose to rely on my U-Turn Orbit special turntable, and then we just took delivery of a brand new Yamaha turntable, and we also used that as well. And again, everything and anything that I talk about in these videos is linked down in the description below. So if you want more information about these associated products, you will find it down there. Now, as for the performance of the One Cast itself, I'm not going to mince words or beat around the bush. It's really good. It's fantastic, actually. In my previous Unity Atom review, I mentioned that the sound itself wasn't necessarily neutral. It wasn't bad. It was just kind of its own thing. Whereas the One Cast has a decidedly more, dare I say, hi-fi or audiophile sound. It's going to be a sound that a lot more people are likely used to or is along the lines of something that they're chasing. But let's do what we do and let's break it down into its individual components. In terms of bass, the One Cast has some of the best bass that I have ever heard in an integrated amplifier. It's almost Krell-like. Those of you that have been around this hobby for a really long time will know exactly what I'm talking about. But to be fair, I have not heard bass control out of a 100-watt integrated amplifier such as the One Cast like this in damn near anything else that I've encountered in recent memory. It does have better, deeper, more taut bass than even the Unity Atom, and it has more texture to it. So no matter what loudspeaker we connected to the Cyrus, the bass was just always to die for. It really was. And I do want to point this little note out. The control over the bass drivers is of paramount importance because when you have a speaker, say for instance, like the Concept 500, that does seem to be incredibly picky as it relates to the type of amplifier that you use with it, it's just nice to know that everything that we connected to the Cyrus sounded really, really good. So the Cyrus isn't picky, but it has the control and the resolution in order to get the most out of, say, a loudspeaker that is picky in the Concept 500 from Q Acoustics. In terms of mid-range, the Cyrus is, near as makes no difference, neutral, at least through all of the loudspeakers that we chose to pair it with. And its mid-range performance actually reminded me of a couple of very high-end Harman products from a few years back. And that's high praise because Harman on a whole does tend to favor neutrality over a signature sound. So while the bass on the Cyrus may be a bit Krell-like, the mid-range in this particular One Cast is just phenomenal. If you are someone that values neutrality, if you're someone that doesn't want an amplifier that editorializes in any way, I would highly recommend checking out the Cyrus because it is about as uncolored of a mid-range as I have encountered from a Class D based amplifier. Conversely, though, the high frequencies are not as, well, sweet. They are very detailed. They do have plenty of extension, but they do lack that little bit of top-end sparkle or finesse. So while the detail is there, the extension, the air, the attack, all of the little macro dynamics, while that is all present, a cymbal hit on the Cyrus doesn't quite ring the way the metal texture of a cymbal, in my opinion, sounds in real life. You can clearly tell that it's a cymbal. It's not like a cymbal suddenly sounds like something else. It's just, there's that little bit of metallic sheen that some amplifiers retain where the Cyrus is a little bit more rolled off and a little dry in comparison. But all in all, the amount of detail retrieval in the high frequencies, the control of it, the extension of it, and the lack of, say, harsh or fatiguing high frequency sounds is amazing. And that is one of the hallmarks of the Cyrus itself. But it really is the whole that makes the sound that comes out of the Cyrus One Cast so enjoyable because it is very incredibly well balanced and easy to listen to. It may not be as easy or as unique as the Unity Atom, and it may not be as romanticized as, say, a Marantz, but I argue that it is actually a little bit more refined than both of those and a little bit more truer to the source. That is to say that the designers at Cyrus didn't really seem to impart any of themselves into the mix so much as they were so concerned with making sure that you got everything that the artist intended. Now, moving away from the individual sonic traits of the Cyrus, let's talk about its soundstage. Now, it is not the widest soundstage of the amplifiers we currently have in-house, not by a long shot. It does extend beyond the outer boundaries of the loudspeakers themselves, but it is not going to bowl you over with a faux almost 360, hell, 180 degree type presentation. What exists between the speakers is incredibly special. It really is. This is one of the more defined sound stages between the right and left speakers that I've heard at this price point. And center imaging is to die for. Absolutely phenomenal. So whether you listen to big, large passages of music or something a little bit more acoustic and a quartet, the Cyrus scales appropriate, is able to reproduce that sense of grandeur or keep things incredibly intimate. But it just isn't going to fully extend or come close to wrapping around you with that type of soundstage delivery. But what exists kind of right to the edges of the speaker and in between is incredibly special. In terms of dynamics, this is another thing that I have to give the Cyrus a lot of praise on because I do think that a lot of digital amplifiers nowadays, they do get dynamics right, but there's kind of a gap as the dynamics start to build. And what I mean by that is things are quiet and then they're just suddenly kind of loud. And you seem to miss 2 or 3 steps in between. Now, Class A amplifiers, Class AB amplifiers, in my humble opinion, don't really miss those steps as often. Where Class D amplifiers, that is one of the hallmark traits about them that I don't always cotton to. Well, thankfully, the Cyrus doesn't have that problem. When the music goes from soft to loud or the crescendo builds, you get that sense of build. It doesn't appear as if out of nowhere. It's still lightning quick, but every step along the way is shown and presented to you fully, and that is a very, very good thing. Apart from the Cyrus's sound, there are some other attributes to its performance that I do think are worth mentioning, starting with the fact that you can connect other devices to it. In this instance, we connected two different turntables. One that had a built-in phono preamp. Well, actually, both of our turntables have built-in phono preamps, but I used the U-Turn Orbit Special with the built-in phono preamp inside the Cyrus, but I used the new Yamaha with its built-in phono preamp connected to the analog input of the Cyrus. And I have to say, the phono preamp inside of the Cyrus is very, very good. It's a great match for both of the turntables I just mentioned. And I don't see it as being a weak point, and the sonic characteristics that I just described to you were achieved through streaming music as well as through playback of vinyl records. So you can expect largely the same sound to come out of the Cyrus, whether you choose to stream your favorite streaming music or you choose to put on a vinyl record. The Cyrus does have a full-size headphone jack, and it does have a very nice headphone amplifier that is capable of driving most headphones on the market today. I used it with a pair of Andover Audio PM50s. They have become my go-to reference sitting at my desk headphones. Through the Cyrus, however, there was some top-end grain, and that was really the big thing. I was expecting taut bass, and for the most part, I got that. I was expecting a largely uncolored mid-range. Admittedly, the PM50s do have some sweetening in the mid-range themselves, so the slightly drier side or more neutral side of the Cyrus kind of, I don't know, it blended very nicely with the PM50s, but up top, I don't know what it was, but the high frequencies through the PM50s, which are usually pretty smooth, if not maybe even a little bit rolled off, they took on a little bit of grain. And I don't know how else to describe it other than high frequencies at slightly higher than moderate volumes inside the headphones themselves kind of felt sandy. Like literal grains of sand. It's nothing too distracting, but it definitely was a departure from what I experienced in the high frequencies through speakers. And so it just jumped out at me, and it is worth noting here. But all in all, for a smart amplifier in 2020, the Cyrus One Cast is phenomenal. From a performance standpoint, there's actually very little to be upset about, and there's even more to be excited about. But no product is perfect, including this one. So what don't I like about it? In last week's Unity Atom review, I said that the designers of the Atom likely started with the user experience and then worked their way out from there. Well, the Cyrus team obviously focused their attention on performance and worried about the user experience never. It's terrible. Sorry, it's really bad. First of all, the manual control of this particular unit is simple because there are but two dials, two options for you to choose from. But even its simple two-dial construction makes choosing things like inputs kind of a bit of a guessing game because everything is kind of denoted by a picture, except that picture is only readable from, say, within a foot. If you step back any further than that, your guess is as good as mine in terms of which input you've chosen. And the same is true for the volume. You never really quite know where you are on the volume dial because, well, the volume dial just spins forever. So you have to go by the light and where the light is in an almost 360-degree arc. Only problem is if you don't sit dead center with the Cyrus in front of you, the dials are so big they block their own damn lights. So you don't know where anything is set. And never mind the remote, which has no direct hotkeys for inputs. Nope, you get an arrow and a guess. So much of this product kind of relies on that sort of memory sense or recall, and that was frustrating. It was so frustrating because on the surface, at first glance, the Cyrus is pretty. It really is. Let's forget its ginormous ass, but it's pretty. It's a good-looking piece. It is well built. It's well built. It's sturdy. It feels like a proper hi-fi component. But damn, once you get everything connected and you sit in your chair and you go, let's bring on the music, and you grab that stupid plastic remote and you realize it's not intuitive at all. And I know some of you may be watching this going, yes, but this is the One Cast. It's about being smart because you're going to use your phone. That's fun too. Because while I do applaud the Cyrus team for not reinventing the wheel, instead they said, you know what, your car already has wheels, so we're going to go ahead and use those. And what I mean by that is they didn't come up with their own app to control this thing. No. You like Tidal so much, use Tidal app. And then just select the One Cast in your Bluetooth or AirPlay or Wi-Fi enabled speaker option and just cast to the thing. And that's great. That part is great, and it works as advertised, because if you know your streaming music service of choice's app inside and out, well then the Cyrus One Cast's performance or usability is basically just going to be an extension of that app. So that is the good thing. The not so good thing, though, is that it relies very, very heavily on Google Home in order to initially set up. But even if you go to the Cyrus One Cast's webpage and look at all of the things that the manufacturer has chosen to point out in order to entice you to this particular product, it is all very, very heavily skewed towards the power Google Home user. And if you're not one of those people, you're kind of going to miss out on a lot of what this particular product has to offer. But apart from its smart functionality and apart from its streaming prowess, yes, if you like to stream music, and who doesn't? We're big fans of streaming music here. It's phenomenal because it relies solely on the apps that the streaming music platform of your choice has already thought to design. Now, if you want to connect the Cyrus to, say, your smart TV, because it does have an HDMI input, well, it can do that. And that is awesome. It was a trait that I loved in the Unity Atom, and I am so happy that Cyrus has included it here. However, like the Unity Atom, it's not without its handshake issues. And now we connected it to the Sony A8H OLED for the purposes of this review, and I understand that the Sony has its own demons to wrestle with as it relates to HDMI, specifically HDMI and ARC. But it just seemed to have a little bit harder time with the Cyrus in comparison to the Unity Atom. But it also had a difficult time with its Sony receiver. So I'm not fully faulting the Cyrus here because I can't say for 100% certainty that the fault didn't lie somewhere else. But I have a sinking suspicion that not all HDMI components are going to play nice or the same, and you may encounter a few hiccups in your travels. So there's just, again, there are a lot of really, really good things about the One Cast's performance. Like once you get it hooked up and once you have kind of learned its quirks and you start to live with it day to day and it becomes a little less of a learning curve process, that part of the user experience of living with it is phenomenal because it is a fantastic, fantastic all-in-one smart amplifier. Just getting to that point is a real pain in the ass. Now, I know throughout this review, I have referenced a number of products that probably or do compete favorably with the One Cast. And we're going to start with the Unity Atom because, well, we just reviewed it for one, and it is the most comparable product, probably both in performance and price. I know the Unity Atom is more expensive, but I will argue in this instance, you do get what you pay for. And in this instance, your extra $1,000 or so buys you a vastly superior user experience. Now, there are a number of products that can do what the One Cast can do, but at a lower price point. And the first one that comes to mind is one that we just got in-house, and that is the Bluesound PowerNode 2i. Now, we have not spent a lot of time with this particular product yet, and that review is coming. But my early initial feelings on the Bluesound PowerNode 2i are that it's going to compete likely very favorably with the One Cast here. Another integrated amplifier that is worth mentioning because it offers a lot of the same functionality and has an equally craptastic remote and some kind of guesswork in its manual interface, and that is the Pro-ject MaiA DS2. Now, I think the Pro-ject MaiA DS2 is gorgeous. I think it's a lovely piece of kit, and I actually love it through and through. But I will admit, it suffers some of the same drawbacks as the One Cast in that not everything is always the most clear, and there are definitely corners that were cut in the design, specifically in the use of a remote control, which is just among the worst I have ever encountered. But if you're really on a budget, and it's worth mentioning, if we're going to be relying on our smartphones to interact with a smart amplifier in 2020, well, you can do many of the same things that you can with the Cyrus One Cast that you can on the Arylic A50. So like I said, there is a lot of competition in the smart amplifier space, especially in 2020, because you can do this at virtually every price point. But I am going to argue that there are very few smart amplifiers on the market right now that sound as good as the Cyrus One Cast. But like I brought up in the beginning of this video, you kind of have to decide what type of enthusiast you are. Do you put performance above all else? And if you do, is the user experience part of that performance? Because I have to admit, the Cyrus One Cast has all of the sonic performance I could ever hope and want. It is audiophile hi-fi gold through and through. But it is one of the worst user experiences I've also ever had. And so, how do the two balance each other out? For me, it makes the Cyrus One Cast a little bit of a harder sell. Not impossible, because like I said, after living with it for a while, you do get used to its quirks, and its quirks may get chalked up to character. But it's not as intuitive, it's not easy to pick up and use straight away, and it doesn't make you instantly fall in love with it. So you have to kind of develop a relationship with it. And if you're willing to put all that effort into it and you're willing to learn how to use it to its full potential, then you might be rewarded with one of the finest smart amplifiers on the market today. But if you are looking for something that's a little bit more, take it out of the box, set it, forget it, and just know instinctually how to use it, this ain't that product. But that's up for you to decide. So that's it, everybody. That's my review of the Cyrus One Cast. What did you guys think? Let me know down in the comments below. If you like this video, please do give it a thumbs up, like, and subscribe. It really does help. Be sure to follow me on Instagram at Recovering Audiophile. And if you want more behind the scenes stuff, maybe some outtakes and things that don't always make it to air, consider becoming a member and click join down by subscribe and read all about our membership tiers. Outside of that, that's all I have for today. Remember, the only person that has to like the sound of your system is you. So happy listening, everybody. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you on the next video. Bye.
The name?
Unity Adam.
That was great. You're killing it today.
I'm on fire today.